I used to clean offices back when I was a student going to university. It was a great job for students because they didn't care when you showed up as long as you got the job done between the closed hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. This one law office I cleaned every Thursday was pretty cool by design, but it always spooked me out. The building was about 6 stories high, and the law firm, being on top, had a beautiful view. It was a heritage building located in what was the city's original town square. I was told it was where town hangings had once occurred, and the particular building I worked in was at one time a brothel. So lots of history in that alone made me want to get the job done as early as possible. The whole 6th floor would take me about an hour to clean. I usually managed to be out of there by 8 or maybe 9 at the latest. Usually taking a beautiful sunset too. This night I had stayed late at school and arrived at the job well after dark and close to midnight. The layout of this law firm was a circle. You take the elevator up with your cart and the doors open to a reception and a waiting area. To the right were the washrooms and then individual law offices circled around the floor with a large boardroom in the middle and a staff break room at the opposite end. A strange feeling usually hit me as soon as the elevator doors opened. This weird feeling of something there, but the stillness of the vacant space kept reassuring you that was crazy talk. The later in the evening it was, the stronger the feeling. I was not looking forward to this next hour. This night, the doors opened and I could hear people talking and laughing. It sounded like ladies were working late and chatting it up in the break room. I remember smiling with relief because I was pretty scared to be there alone so late. I walked around the right side, calling out hello to let them know I was there and not surprise them. As I rounded the corner to the break room, the talking sounds just stopped and absolutely no one was there. I stood there frozen for a moment and thought maybe they were in the offices on the left. So I kept going, calling out hello and announcing my presence. No one was in the building at all, but the chatter I had just heard was clear as day. As I came full circle back to the elevator, I kid you not, the elevator doors opened by themselves. I was so frightened, so I just pushed the cart back on the elevator and headed home. Nope, nope, nope. My sister was living in another state, and my parents travelled to her a lot, leaving me alone at home for 7 to 15 days at a stretch. I wasn't able to accompany them due to my work. One day, I invited a Tinder date to my place post-work. It would have been past 10 p.m. when he reached my place. I was talking to him when I realised he was my cousin's classmate. The conversation took a light-hearted turn when we started talking about my cousin and some childhood memories. The conversation was light-hearted and we talked like friends. Then it was past 11:30 when he got up to leave. During this period, we just smoked a cigarette or two and had filtered water. He wanted to use the washroom and I pointed him to my room and hence the washroom. Now, as our walls were freshly painted, I was banned from putting posters on the wall and hence I used the bathroom tile to hang my painting that I made in the rented apartment. It was a rainbow eye. He went to the loo and came back screaming my name, asking am I part of a cult or black magic group? It was an odd question as we'd never talked about anything remotely related to such topic. I thought he was just joking and wanted to scare me so that I asked him to sleep over. I called out his bluff, but he grew more and more serious. He very sternly asked me to reply to his question and I told him no, that shit scares me and I stay away from scary movies. Even so, being part of a cult or something is way out the question. He confessed that the painting that I have hung inside the bathroom is very unsettling, and he wanted me to come clean as this cannot be someone's imagination. I denied all claims and just wanted him to leave. We walked out the house and I accompanied him to the main gate of the apartment I live in. Before leaving, He asked me again to come clean, and I told him that I was telling the truth. He sighed and told me to take care of myself and remove the painting because it's a bad mojo to him. He's been part of black magic cults because he can sense supernatural, and due to issues he faced, he quit and would like to stay as far as possible from all this. He told me to remove the painting and destroy it as it gave him bad vibes. I bid him goodbye and went back home. I called up my best friend, who's a night owl just like me, and laughed about the weird ending to a good date. She knew that my house had a history of weird incidences, and it was common to hear utensils or footsteps even when no one was living on the floor above or house next to ours. It's a ground plus 3-story building with 2 houses on each floor, sharing a common wall. After an hour or two of gossiping about random stuff, I started feeling weird and complained to my friend that I wasn't feeling well. My friend blamed it on exhaustion and asked me to take rest. She asked me to call her if I wasn't able to sleep because of insomnia, and she was up and working all night. I went to sleep, but in spite of the AC being on, I started sweating and feeling really weird. I called my friend, who blamed it on my overthinking and asked me to remove the painting. I did as she asked. Then he asked me to cover all the mirrors, as they tend to amplify your feelings, and asked to remove CDs I had covered my wardrobe with, as they were reflective too. I did what she asked and went to bed. With all night of tossing and turning, I woke up with a high fever and an urge to puke. I wasn't able to take in water as well. I called up my office and asked for a leave. I fiddled with medicines, but felt very uneasy. As time passed by, I took a telephonic consultation from the doctor and asked my other friends who lived close by to drop off some medicines for me. While I was sick in bed waiting for the medicine, the Tinder guy called up. He told me about his medical condition, which was strikingly similar to mine. He also asked if I had taken down the painting. I was angry, but I couldn't waste my energy and replied yes. He told me to take him seriously and get my house cleansed, as he definitely felt bad vibes all around the house. He didn't mention the severity to do so, as I was home alone last night, and advised me to stay somewhere else till I got my house cleansed. He wasn't joking, and he was very concerned. I ignored everything and focused on getting better. I had to take 2 medicine shots, injections the next day, as my fever wasn't going down from 104 degrees, and I was constantly puking out medicines and water. After I got well, I took the painting and hung it again. I felt some kind of relief in doing so. I still feel I shouldn't have taken down in the first place. To this day, it's an unsettling painting for people, and I still feel better whenever I look at it. No one could explain what happened to both of us. I and him were completely fine. Also, we smoked from my pack of cigarettes. I've been smoking from the same pack for the last 3 days. We drank only filtered water from my house that was filled in every bottle. I use that bottle for my office every day. Strange and unexplainable. I'm still friends with the Tinder guy, but till now, even after years have passed, he refuses to enter my house. Also, I thought it was worth mentioning, I don't draw or paint often, and that painting was just my imagination. Well, I don't know how you'll take this, but there's been incidences when I was a kid, where twice I have fallen into a deep sleep. Once I was home along during summer break, as my parents were working, and I heard a noise from my parents' room. I went to check, thinking it might be a rodent, although when I reached the room, nothing was out of place. When I was returning back to my room, there was a full man-sized shadow on the wall in the hallway. The catch is that the hallway would not display any shadow on the wall, as the light is on the roof of the hallway, hence all shadows are formed on the door. But this incident was around 11 AM in the morning, so no lights were switched on, and the hallway position is such that none of the rooms can cast a shadow on that wall. Surprisingly, I went into the room facing the wall and slept on the bed facing the hallway. I woke up after nearly 6 hours after my mother woke me up. It was weird as I was home alone, and when my mother came back home after work, she rang the doorbell multiple times, but I didn't wake up. She had to wake me up pretty rigorously to wake me up. Another astonishing thing is that I have a cat sleep. That means any small noises can wake me up very easily. A similar incident happened when my dad was out of town, and my mother and sister went out to buy some groceries from the market. I had an afternoon nap, and hence I was fresh and awake. I told my mum and sister that I will be opening the door, but they still took the keys in case of an emergency. I started reading my literature chapter, my favourite subject, after my family left, and I heard a doorbell. It was one of our neighbours who asked for my father, and I told him he was out of town, and as soon as the neighbour left, I latched the wired door and then the wooden door that has the key lock. I was feeling uncomfortable, and I don't know when I slept in the living room. Again, it was an unconscious sleep. I woke up several hours later when my sister jolted me awake. She told me they were ringing doorbells, my dad was calling on the landline, people were screaming my name. It should have been audible as our house is on the first floor. Then my neighbour had to climb up the balcony, cut the widescreen door, open it, and then enter the house and open the main door for my family. My parents were concerned, although these incidences happened years apart from each other. They took me to a doctor, got my tests done. There was no explanation by the doctor. My first couple of weeks at school were incredibly nerve-wracking. I'd never spent more than a night or two away from home. So I felt homesick and overworked as I was getting used to my new work schedule. I was making friends with some of the boys in my year and things were looking up. At this point, I was probably the smallest boy in my year. I hadn't hit my growth spurt yet, and I wouldn't for a couple more years. The older boys in our schoolhouse would tell us stories of how the school was haunted and that we would never adventure alone past sunset. My friends and I didn't believe them in the slightest. We assumed they were just trying to play tricks on the new boys. But we were so wrong. I remember the first time something odd happened. I was quite under the weather and had a high temperature. This was within my first month of moving into the school. My teacher suggested that I should take a cold shower. It was late in the evening, and showers were usually reserved first thing in the morning, unless you had PE that day. I remember feeling rather dizzy, and so my friend offered to accompany me. We went down to the shower room together. Having showers at my school were probably the most awkward thing I can remember about my time there. One big open room with a dozen or so shower heads. That was a tough thing to get used to when I first started, but I did get used to it rather quickly. I was never really shy about my body or anything like that, but still, there were at least 2.5 dozen boys in my schoolhouse, all crammed together in a completely open communal shower. It was awkward, to say the least. But back to the point. When my friend and I went down late in the evening, we placed our clothes under a shower head that wasn't going to be used by either of us and got in the shower. The hot water boiler would not have been on at that time in the evening, so my cold shower certainly was cold. After around 5 minutes of my friend and I standing in the freezing cold water, all at once, every unused shower turned on full blast. As well as that, the freezing water suddenly turned boiling hot, like red hot. I'm sure if my friend and I didn't manage to get out of the way of the water before it reached full temperature, we would have been burned badly. We immediately made a run for the door of the shower room, but it was locked and we couldn't get it opened. We started panicking, as you could imagine. 2 naked 13-year-old boys slamming on the shower door with all we could muster. Then, almost as fast as they all started, the showers all stopped. I remember that my heart was racing like it had never raced before. I remember feeling as if I was drowning in steam from the showers. After that, the shower started spurting out something that looked like bright red blood, and I won't ever forget the smell. Like rusty metal mixed with sewage. My friend and I were truly cowering at the door by this point. I'll speak for myself when I say that was the scariest thing I had experienced up until that point in my life. Then again, the water stopped and the door unlocked. Our clothes were truly ruined, along with our towels. My teachers were very strict. They could be downright mean. You did not want to be punished at my school. And that's what terrified us more in that moment. We were more scared of being sent to the headmaster's office than we were of whatever event just happened, paranormal or not. So, we did our best to clean up. But it didn't work. The room still looked as if a bomb had been dropped. So we went to our head of house and explained what happened. He seemed confused, perhaps even slightly scared. He told us to go back to our dorm. The next day, the shower room was closed and we had to use another house's room. As I said, this was probably the first time I experienced something that I cannot explain. Whether it was paranormal or not, which personally I'm almost certain it was. How else would all the showers turn themselves on and the door lock itself? This is only one story from my 5 years at my school. And honestly, this is one of the mildest. The most terrifying stories come from when it was a school holiday and most children had gone home to visit their parents. I never did, as my parents worked too long to look after me. When the school was quiet, I swear I could hear echoes of screams. Thinking about it now still makes my skin crawl. This takes place around 2 months after the last incident, with the showers. It was the first Christmas holiday, and most boys were packing up to spend 2 weeks at home with their parents. My parents had already written to me and said they were too busy for me to come home, so I would be spending the holiday there. I have to admit, I was disappointed, but I did as I was told. All of the friends I had made left for the holiday, so I was pretty lonely. But I was enjoying some rest time. For those of you who don't know how most boarding schools in Britain work, we had a 6-day week. We had normal lessons all day from Monday through Saturday, and on Sunday, we had to attend a church service for the first half of the day, meaning we only got one afternoon off to rest in the week. So I spent most of the time I was allowed in bed reading books. The weird things were more prominent when it was the holidays. It was as if whatever energies were there became braver when there were less people around. In my schoolhouse, around 2.5 dozen boys, but only 4 had stayed for the holiday. Only 1 was the same age as me, and none had stayed from my dorm room, which I have to admit I was thrilled about. Well, I was at first anyway. The first couple of nights or so went fine. I was doing my 13-year-old boy thing. And I won't go into any more details about that, lol. But after the first days of peace, the weird things started again. At first it wasn't anything major. Echoes of screams and moans coming from the courtyard, but I rationalised as older boys playing pranks. But it did scare me. But I didn't want to appear weak or fall into their prank, so I slept through my fears and didn't ask any of the other boys to come and sleep in my dorm with me. So, I slept, and when I woke, every other bed in my dorm apart from mine had been moved to the far side of the dorm, which thoroughly freaked me out, but again, I assumed it was a prank for some of the older boys. And if it's one thing I had learned by this point, if you're being pranked or joked on in any way, show no weakness or it will keep happening. So I moved all the beds back myself and went down for a shower. When I got down there was already another boy in the shower room. I can't remember exactly how old he was, but he was in the older years, so probably around 15 or 16. For this story, I'll name him Toby. By this point, I was used to showering with others, so I didn't care that he was there at all. He told me his plan for sneaking down at night and breaking into the dessert kitchen and having a midnight feast. He asked if I wanted to join him, and though I had never done anything against the rules before, he assured me that he had done it loads and that he'd never been caught. So, I agreed. Later that day, I got ready in a suit of all black to be able to sneak around more effectively. Toby was just wearing his normal clothes and looked at me like I was a huge nerd when I explained my reasoning for my clothes. And so, we started sneaking down to the kitchen. When we got there, we started eating as much ice cream as we could. When suddenly, a whole shelf of tin food threw itself onto the floor, and the kitchen doors slammed themselves shut. I looked at Toby in a what do we do kind of way. We picked up food and left almost as quickly as we came. Toby and I started walking back towards our schoolhouse. This is the bit that still gives me the chills. We heard footsteps coming up the hall on the way back. We assumed this would be a teacher, so we found somewhere to hide until they'd passed. But no one came, and we carried on walking back towards our dorm. This is when I felt something grab my leg and yank it. I got back up, we looked around us, and there was no one around. We started running because we were both scared, when something yanked Toby's leg. He fell, and he fell way worse than I did, and banged the front of his head, and it gave him a bloody nose. He got back up relatively quickly. He was a rugby boy, and he was used to this kind of thing. By this point, we were sprinting full speed back to our schoolhouse. We got back, and we swore we wouldn't speak of what happened again, out of fear of getting in trouble. I went to my dorm and tried to get to sleep, but I was terrified of what had just happened. After a couple hours of just laying, I did manage to get some sleep. I woke up at some point in the night, to my bed along with the others in my door, being slammed into the far side of the room with force. At this point, I was completely over having my dorm room. I got up and went into Toby's dorm. I explained what happened in my dorm to someone I thought would understand me. He told me he knew what I was talking about and told me to make a bed in his dorm, and I slept in there for the rest of the holiday. On the plus side, Toby looked out for me during the time he was at school, and we still keep in touch now. I'll preface this by saying I do believe in ghosts. I do have reasons to believe really is what I believe it is. I believe it was a dream, where I was visited by my grandmother, who died in May 2021, and my uncle, who died in March 2008. While in his 30s, Eric was diagnosed with a brain tumour in 1998, the year he was married, and in under a year, his wife left him, and he was dealing with half of his brain being removed. Chemo, hair loss, losing his muscle. My uncle was a good-looking guy. I don't remember him ever feeling bad for himself. He was still happy, despite the wife thing, and he got better. But then, in 2008, the tumour came back, and in a rush, he was sick and just not handling that very well. The day this started, he made his will with my grandpa, made his last wishes, and later that night, he fell down some stairs and he was in a coma. I believe that was a Saturday night. Monday morning, we crammed a few dozen people into his hospital room and said goodbye as the machines were turned off. In the decade following, until within the last couple years, I'd say, I grieved. The first few years were terrible, utterly terrible. Around the same date, March 31st, I just became a wreck, crying, grumpy, emotional. As years have gone on, it's gotten better until now. March 31st is just a date. I hope that makes sense. Following Eric's death, my grandparents took his passing just as badly, just as hard. To the point that Grandma did break into his house to take some things and was caught. No criminal charges were pressed though, just a fine. On May 4th, 2021 comes, and at 9:30 AM, my Grandma Mary passes away so suddenly, it was a true shock. Similar to Eric, but we weren't there beside her because really we thought she'll be fine. She was hospitalised the Wednesday before, some difficulties breathing. Then as time progressed, her body was just not handling itself very well. I spoke with her Saturday, my mom saw her Sunday. Mom said their last conversation was of them discussing Mary's knee surgery, so even Grandma Mary believed she'd be fine. Her passing so sudden, we got the news of her passing as my other uncle, Ben, was literally stepping outside to drive the 3 hours to visit her. That's how shockingly sudden this was. Now, there's a third death. My 12-year-old Chihuahua, Trace, was a 3-legged, long-haired boy who had a share of health problems, but nothing we couldn't handle with medication. He was diagnosed in 2017 with a heart murmur, arthritis diagnosis, and following that, he started taking medication for his thyroid within last year. Chihuahuas can live to be 20 years old. My husband and I both thought we had another 7 years with him. Then suddenly, Memorial Day in May 2021, we woke up and he refused us to take his pills. And I came to realize he hadn't eaten since Saturday. His heart, which was 20% bigger than what it should be because of his heart murmur, was failing. Getting him to the emergency vet by 8:30 that morning, they put him in the oxygen tank for a couple hours while we sat out in the parking lot trying to figure out what's next. The vet tells then we have the option of another medication that could actually make him worse, or euthanasia. To say I was hysterical is an understatement. We made that decision to spare him, and we spent about 15-20 minutes with him, saying goodbye while he was still alive. And even after the vet gave him that concoction, we had another while with him then too. In the last month, all I've been doing is telling Trace, I want to see you again. Come to me. I wanted his spirit or his ghost to come to me. I've dreamed of Trace, and every time it feels like a comfort. I cry upon waking, but it is a comfort. After that, I've dreamed of him a couple times, but they just seem like normal dreams. I'm lucky to be able to dream something and remember it the following day. They are at times so vivid, so real. That leads me to last night, the morning hours of Sunday, July the 11th. I know it was after midnight because my husband came to bed about 3:30 as usual. In the dream, the setting is camping, which could make sense with my family. Every August we go camping as a family reunion, and maybe it was because with May being the month of the passing of 2 living people and an animal I loved so much. Or maybe it was because Saturday evening I went through my grandmother's things, pictures and memorabilia. As I'm walking towards these 2 chairs, clearly an outside setting, is suddenly sitting beside each other, Uncle Eric and Grandma Mary. Even in my dream, I'm shocked to see them and can't believe they're there. In my dream, I know they've died and there can't be a way they're there, but they are. Even in my dream, I ask someone, can you see them too? Yes, they could. So going forward, I approach Eric and his face is so clear to me. I can't describe it. It's so surreal by how affected I was even in my dream and now typing this. Neither Eric or Mary say anything in my dream, but his arm is around her and they don't say anything I remember. Touching Eric's knee, I do remember thinking they didn't look like others in my dream. They had this other look to them. I can't explain this very well. Eric's face and Grandma's face, though I remember so clearly, they were together in camping chairs, his arm around her shoulders, and she looked so happy. Waking up, I was in a state of, okay, I had a dream involving my grandma and Eric, but the more I thought about it, the more I came to this realization. So much so, I even sent a text to another grandmother of mine, and I even told her that I dreamed of Eric and Mary, and it had this other feel to it, not like a dream. More than that though, I felt comforted. A kind of comfort I hadn't felt before. In May 2021, I lost my grandma and my dog both suddenly and unexpectedly. My dad's dog passed as well, but his passing was expected. With all this, I just haven't been coping very well. My emotional state was in an uproar of sorts. This morning, I was relieved, feeling better. So I do truly and honestly believe my uncle and grandma came to see me last night while I was in a state of where I wouldn't be afraid. They came to see me to give me comfort I needed and couldn't receive without their help. Nothing anyone can say will convince me differently. Throughout my entire life, I've always been very sensitive to the paranormal. It seems actually quite normal to me. There are very few things that I will claim does not exist in reality with any certainty. Much of it has to do with my experience as a child or infant. When I was still in my crib, I must have been no older than 18 months. My mother told me that she would watch me through the crack of the door because I was always talking to someone. It was always something that happened in the morning before she'd go to scoop me from the crib and begin our day. Every day, having a nonsense baby conversation with something in the corner of the room. When she went in, she felt like there was something in my room besides herself and myself. She said that this presence or entity was not bad, that it couldn't be bad, because she got a feeling that the presence was there for me in a loving way. She felt safe because I was being watched over by a good energy. Sometimes she would feed me in a high chair in the living room, and according to her, I would turn towards the room suddenly as if someone had called my name. She felt that presence from the other room. This is something she had told me throughout my life, but I never shared her my own experiences before or after learning these things. I have memories of being in my crib, which by itself is pretty strange, as most people stop remembering things going back to around 3. Before that is sort of a fog of forgetfulness for most of us, but my nightly experiences in this crib are clear to me. So clear it's as if they happened yesterday, and I'm 40 years old. I would see fractals of rotating light. I could see images and people sort of arcing over me in the darkness, lit up on its own as if being played on a long curved movie screen. I could see how can I explain this? But what I perceive only now to be stars, like a moving universe of pinpoint lights that slowly moved around me. When I was a baby, and I really was literally a baby, this entertained me to no end, and I could watch it in awe until I fell asleep. Sometimes, something would wake me up in the night. Something in the darkness would touch and tickle my feet. I remember looking at my feet, wondering without fear what or who this is. Every time this happened, I saw a hand and arm, pale or whitish, reaching out to my feet the way any one of us would to play around with something cute, like a kitten or a puppy or a baby. My crib was lit very dimly by some light, but the rest of my room was pitch black except for the rectangular outline of the closed door, the light I could see from the hallway of our apartment. I would look for the person attached to this arm, but the rest of the arm went into the darkness, and all I could see was the arm. I would often think, I'm tired, stop that, in whatever way baby thinks of that without words, and the hand would retract into the darkness. I never felt afraid. Maybe that's because this being was indeed good, like my mother said. Or maybe it was at a point where I hadn't even learned what fear was yet. I had no reason to be afraid. The world was yet filled with loving beings in the day, in the night, in the real world, and the ethereal. My mother recently told me that she never told my father about these experiences. I certainly never got to tell him anything of what I experienced. Before they divorced, she went to tell him about a strange thing that used to happen with her and me, in our old apartment. Oh, the thing that was in the room? Yeah, there was something in there. I felt it too, he admitted.